a pretty bird, and she warbles when she flies, but she never hollers cuckoo till the 4th day of July. I'm gonna build me a cabin, I'm gonna build it so high, so I can hear the cuckoo when she goes by. Jack of diamonds, oh Jack of diamonds, I've known you from home. You robbed all my pockets of silver and gold. Well, I played cards in England, and I've gambled in Spain, and I'll bet you $5 that I'll win this next game. Going up on a mountain, I'm gonna build me a still, and I'll sell you some whiskey for a $5 bill. I'm gonna eat when I'm hungry, I'm gonna drink when I'm dry. If I'm feeling much better, I might sprout wings and fly. Bird, and she warbles when she flies, but she never hollers cuckoo till the 4th day of July. Thank you. That was an old song, an old English folk song. That, I don't know how many hundred years old it is, but it was collected down in the Appalachian Mountains by a fellow named Cecil Sharp back around 1915, 1916. And Cecil Sharp was an interesting character in American music history. He was an English folklorist and music collector, song catcher, and he was having a hard time making ends meet over in England during World War I, so he came over to America to earn some extra money, and he was teaching folk dance and traveling around the United States, teaching dance, and while he was traveling around, he was keeping his ears open, hoping to hear some interesting folk music. And he wasn't too impressed with the music he was hearing as he traveled around America, until one day he went to dinner at a lady's house up in Boston. Her name was Olive Dame Campbell, and she and her husband were teachers at settlement schools down in Appalachia, in Kentucky and North Carolina and Virginia and West Virginia. And she was a musician too, and she decided she was interested in the music that people were singing down there, and she started collecting lyrics and melodies to some of the songs that people were singing in the mountains to entertain themselves. And she took out this book of songs she'd collected after dinner, and she showed them to Cecil Sharp, and he was amazing. His jaw dropped open. He couldn't believe it. He said, "These are songs that I've collected in England, but nobody sings them anymore. There's written records of them. Nobody even knows how the melodies go anymore." And he was very anxious. He said, "I have to meet the people who are still singing this music." And then a train came by, and he got on the train and he went down to West Virginia. And he spent a couple of years collecting songs down in southern Appalachia. And he really worked himself to death because he died shortly after that. But his works included about 90 songs, 88 songs or something like that, and several hundred versions of them. And he published them in a book called English Folk Songs from the Southern Appalachian Mountains, and that song was one of the ones that was in it. And we're going to do another one. He was really interested in ballads. We're going to do one of the ballads too. And he was sort of a follower, I guess a student of a fellow by the name of Francis Childs, who was a professor of English in Harvard University. And it's ironic because Cecil came over from England and collected folk songs in America. Francis Childs went from America and collected folk songs in England because some of his friends over in England were very interested in the ballad tradition, the Scottish and English ballad tradition, and they wanted to put together they wanted to preserve it, somehow collect these songs, and the English government and none of the universities would fund it. So Francis Childs talked to Harvard University into funding it, and he went over there and he spent quite a while collecting about 300 songs, and some of them he had up to 27 versions of, and he collected them and he published them as English and Scottish ballads, and it was a 10-volume set, came out in the late 19th century. So Cecil was very aware of that collection, so he was looking for those songs, and this is one that he found there. In the town where I was born, there was a fair maid dwelling. She's been the ruin of many a poor boy. Her name was Barbary Allen. It was in the merry month of May, the green buds were swelling. Sweet William came from the west country, courting Barbary Allen. He sent his servant out to her, to the place where she was dwelling. Said, my master's ill, he bid you come, if your name is Barbary Allen. Slowly, slowly, she did rise, she went to his bedside, but the only thing that she would say was, young man, you'll die. As she turned and walked away, she could hear the death bell tolling. With each toll, she heard the words, hard-hearted Barbary Allen. Mother, mother, make up my bed, make it long and narrow. Sweet William died for me today, and I'll die for him tomorrow. They buried Barbara in the old churchyard. They buried William nigh her, and from his grave grew a red, red rose, and from hers grew a briar. They grew so high up to the church top till they couldn't grow no higher, and there they formed a lover's knot with the rose wrapped round the briar. Forevermore there'd be a lover's knot with the rose wrapped round the briar. Might be interested in learning a little bit about the instrument Georgianne's playing there before she packs it away. That's called a mountain dulcimer, and it's in the zither family, and it was invented in the southern Appalachian Mountains. People in Kentucky claim to have invented it. People in Arkansas claim to have invented it, but it's sort of evolved from a German zither. People up in the mountains saw German zithers, and they came up with a simpler way to make them, and that's what they came up with. Mountain dulcimer. I mean, dulcimer means sweet sound, and it has a sweet sound. Good for playing ballads, popular songs. Cecil Sharp was in a big hurry to get down to Appalachia because he knew that pretty soon the people that were living isolated in the mountains were going to be influenced by outside sources, and they might lose their culture like the people in England had done. And sure enough, you know, maybe 10 years later, the electric microphone was invented, and that changed everything, because that made radio broadcasts possible and recording possible, and a lot of people started listening to different kinds of music and playing different instruments, and you know, became the birth of a new industry, the recording industry. I'm going to play one by one of the original country bands that recorded back in the 1920s. They were on the Grand Ole Opry. They were a very popular band down in the Nashville area, and they were headed by a physician named Humphrey Bates. And the name of his band was called Humphrey Bates Stringed Orchestra. And they put him on the Grand Ole Opry, and they said, we don't like that name. They wore tuxedos and bowler hats and stuff like that, and they said, we don't want you to dress like that. We don't like that name. So they gave him some overalls and straw hats, and they renamed them Dr. Humphrey Bates and the Possum Hunters. Instant rustification. And this was one of the big hits for them.
If anybody wants to chime in when I do, I can't sing. So if you can drown me out, I like to make noise, though, just like I like to dance, and I can't do that either. So, disclaimer. Disclaimer when I start to make funny noises.
So this is a song about food, about biscuits. Biscuits and gravy, my favorite. And this was a really big hit, and it was actually the subject of a newspaper article I saw that came out in the Nashville Herald or the Nashville, whatever it is down in Nashville. And they said, could somebody really eat that many biscuits and gravy? And there was a big debate, so they took this seriously. 1, 2, 3, 4, eat my biscuits by the score. How many biscuits can you eat this morning? Well, how many biscuits can you eat this morning? This morning, how many biscuits can you eat? 44 and a ham of meat this morning for breakfast right now. Well, what you gonna do if I wake up late this morning?
I don't know.
Well, what you gonna do if I wake up late this morning? This morning, what you gonna do if I wake up late? Give me them biscuits on my plate this morning for breakfast right now. If I wake up mean this morning?
I don't know. What?
Well, what you gonna do if I wake up mean this morning? This morning, what you gonna do if I wake up mean? Give me some bacon, nice and lean this morning for breakfast right now. Well, I like my coffee nice and hot this morning. I like my coffee nice and hot this morning. This morning, well, I like my coffee nice and hot. Give me all the biscuits that you got this morning for breakfast right now. Oh, yeah. biscuits I put gravy this morning for breakfast right now. How many biscuits can you eat this morning?
This morning,
Well, how many biscuits can you eat this morning? This morning, how many biscuits